When a client refers their loved one, their mother or their spouse or a colleague, it means they trust us. And so we measure those things to see, do our clients trust us? Is our brand getting to work? Um, because it's nice to have all the marketing material, all the logos, all of those things, but it's got to tell a story, and it must be reflected in the business.
Hey guys, welcome to Old Mutual BDT's Legacy Series. I'm Timothy Maurice, your behavioral psychology author. Guys, partnering with BDT to bring you the hearts and minds that are reshaping our financial landscape is such a pleasure and honor. In this series, we will hone in on what it takes to build a legacy business, from the marketing to the entire ecosystem of strategy. So welcome to the Legacy Series. Meet Dalton Lakey, who is a passionate advocate for branding and co-branding with the Fair Brand Consulting FC, using strategic visibility to accomplish his goals. He's an extraordinary mind. He's one of my favorite. We've had him on before. Enjoy Dalton Lakey.
Hi, I'm Dalton Lakey from 360 Financial Planning. This is the BDT Building Legacy Brands podcast series. My journey into business really stems from a long career in a corporate environment and developing ideas for about 15 years. And so a lot of concepts were developing over those years before I made the move into business and entrepreneurship. Um, what is important, where the passion comes from, is really from a history of exploring, understanding who I am and how I show up in business really stems from many, many, many years of research. And that's where the passion comes from. So our business really, 360 Financial Planning, it's thought through as a brand. There's a story behind it, and that story reflects itself in how we do business daily. So it's important to understand the history, and that sort of shapes our business today in 360 Financial Planning. Everything we do, from the logo to our processes, there's a story behind it. So I love telling stories, and it's reflected in our history and also our personality. I always talk about our business having an identity, a conscience, and that's where the passion comes from. So it's thought through, and there's a lot of history behind it. We operate in the financial services space, and there are many advisors in the industry, and we have to distinguish ourselves, and our branding, as I mentioned earlier, needs to tell a story, to to portray that story and share that story with our potential clients, because they have many options. And there are many good advisors in our industry. As professionals, we respect other advisors. And so we need to have some distinguishing factor when clients have a choice to make. It's very competitive, and there are many big firms and brokerages out there as well. So, as a smaller business or smaller practice, we need to have that, I want to call it the X factor, this distinguishing factor. And that's why we spend so much time thinking through our brand and what we stand for. So, again, I think it's important to really understand your story, and it needs to be reflected in your branding, because clients have many choices. And so that's why it's so important for the smaller business. The co-branding journey has been uh, very challenging, but also exciting. I think to start out, to explain that we in a very regulated environment in financial services. So we operate under legislation, and we need to pay careful attention to that. And so we as a business, 360 Financial Planning is an approved practice of Fairbairn Consult, which is part of the Old Mutual Group. And what we've had to do is understand the legislation and then build our co-branding strategy. And so again, it goes back to that storytelling. So our clients has an affinity with 360 financial planning, our identity. It's about around relationship building. It's around trust. It's around legacy building. And so that's the core of 360 financial planning. Now, Fairbairn Consult, who's the financial services provider, who's also part of the Old Mutual stable, there's another story there. So Old Mutual's been around for over 170 years. And so that ties in with our story of long-term legacy building and trust. Our clients then feel comfortable that they're working with us, but they also have recourse. They're sharing their dreams with us. They're giving us their money to work with for their families. And so we tell the story that we are their contact point, but from a advice accountability and recourse for the client. Fairbairn Consult is the financial services provider, part of the Old Mutual stable. And we tell that story to clients. We actually explain the layers. And so, in the way we dispense advice, we explain to the client that we have freedom in our selection of service providers. So, whether it's Sanlam, Momentum, PPS, those are all possible solutions for 360 financial planning to deliver to our clients. But from a recourse perspective, we are very proud to say that we're part of Fairbairn Consult within the Old Mutual stable because it gives clients comfort. We are a smaller business and we're fairly new, and so that story I tell constantly. They have the freedom with and options for companies in their solutions. They have the freedom of choice, but they also have recourse with Old Mutual and Fairbairn Consult. So just to pull that together, our storytelling 360 financial planning stands for trust, relationship building, long-term planning, legacy building, shaping legacies. And I think the Old Mutual story is quite aligned because of their track record. And so we've used that in our business. We don't shy away from it, and we spend time explaining that to various stakeholders. And it seems to be working well. And we've encouraged others as well who's in co-branding in our industry. We've encouraged them to spend more time telling that story. Why are you in this big stable such as Old Mutual and Fairbairn Consult? And we've used it. We've given opportunities, so we were able to compete. When we go to market, we can compete against bigger firms, which we say we have this um, big mothership behind us, and we have the flair as an entrepreneur and options and freedom as 360 financial planning. So again, it's the story, the thread of the story, and we tell that story. When we think of our long-term planning or the sustainability of our business, it's actually hinged on our branding and marketing strategy. We what we've done is as a firm 360 financial planning, we pay careful attention to our partnerships as well and those we collaborate with. And so when we go to our clients, we're saying to them that we take a 360 approach. And that language itself, we try to explain to the client that we really care. In financial services, we're not in the business of selling things to them, but more building relationships. And when we select our partnership, or shall I call it a panel of people that we work with, we want to make sure that they aligned with our values. When we talk to our partners, whoever we work with, we collaborate with, we explain to them we have a defined customer journey. This is the way we work. This is who we are. So, for example, if I'm referring a client to a partner to collaborate with, I need to be sure that we have the same value system because our clients are used to working with us and they have an experience. And when we refer somebody, we need to be very sure that we are aligned because it represents who we are. And so everything we do, so that's just one example, everything we do, even in recruitment of staff, every marketing post, every social media post, it's thought through because we're building a long-term brand. This is not going to happen overnight. We're thinking generationally, we're thinking 20, 30 years longer. And even that story around our business, we say to our clients, we want to be sustainable for the long term. We want to shape a legacy in our firm. And to do that, we need to shape your legacy and help you think generationally. And so that keeps us accountable because it's actually very much tied. As we think generationally and take decisions for the long term, that affects our clients and they can trust that these guys are actually going to be around for the long term. And so all of our processes then are aligned to this long term thinking. Often in our industry, they talk about your sales cycle and those kind of things. We don't even use that kind of language. We take up to 3 months to onboard a client. From the outset, we're trying to explain to them that we want to get to know you and build a relationship with you. So, I mean, the question is really around strategy and branding strategy, but I think it pulls through to every aspect of the business. Everything you do, from the email, from every event that you do, the way you give advice, the way you talk to clients, it's geared to the long term. And so it's very, very important to us to keep an eye on it, even in our recruitment of staff. Um, we often had to make difficult decisions when we found that our staff members are not aligned to long-term thinking and values. We're not everyone's cup of tea, and we're comfortable with that. But what we do not negotiate with is that we're building a long-term brand. So when people talk about 360 financial planning, they will use language such as they're relational people. We can trust them. They think long-term. They do not sell to us. They build relationships. And so the story that's beginning to evolve, it takes a lot of effort. It takes time. It takes energy. And sometimes the metrics around, well, shall I say, the quantitative metrics and things that are used, you take a bit longer. So the numbers are not skyrocketing early on from a sales perspective, but we believe that in the long run, it becomes sustainable results. And some key, well, probably a good metric to use is that since we started, we don't lose clients. So we could take 3 months to onboard a client, but the reality is we don't lose them and we often get referrals. In fact, most of our business that we receive is built on referrals. And so these are just some of the things that we do to make sure that it's geared to the long term. The language that we use, something cool that we do when we onboard a client after that 2 to 3 months, we send them a personal video, reminding them of our commitment to the long term, reminding them that we want to build a relationship, and we send it to them on WhatsApp. And then we also have something called a trust barometer, all built into our branding strategy, all built into our processes. And we check the trust barometer by the amount of referrals we receive from a client. When a client refers their loved one, their mother or their spouse or a colleague, it means they trust us. And so we measure those things to see, do our clients trust us? Is our brand getting to work? Because it's nice to have all the marketing material, all the logos, all of those things, but it's got to tell a story. And it must be reflected in the business. So the repetition is also important in the conversation with the clients, regular updates, telling them about our business, making them feel part of the community of 360 financial planning. And so I think from the beginning, I said this, it's a story we're telling. That's the most important thing. It's a story, and that we live up to our values, and it's reflected in everything that we do. That's the way to navigate growth, to navigate change, collaboration, how we choose our partners is all linked to the brand. And when it comes to that, non-negotiable in terms of how we show up. And even in our selection of clients, we give clients the options. Do you want to be part of this? To our staff, do you want to be part of this brand? To our partners, does this excite you? Do you see an alignment? And that's how we feel and believe we'll be around for the long term. Making tough decisions in the beginning, things take a lot slower, but in the long run, we believe that 360 financial planning will be around to stay.